what are your thoughts on the current debate going on right now in Lakers Nation about making D'Lo potentially a sixth man or slowly weaning ourselves off D'Lo and reducing his role to the point where the Lakers are less reliant on him so that when they finally have to make a deal for him, there's less of an adjustment period. Your thoughts on that collection of thoughts?
It's all silly nonsense. D'Lo, these guys are NBA professionals. I'm so tired of this. Like, oh, it's going to be awkward. Like, every play, like, Cam Reddish has been on like 5 teams and he's like 23. Okay, these guys are professional athletes. They understand the nature of the job. D'Lo has a professional NBA agent who explained to him the risks of opting into his contract. The major one being that he is, a $19 million expiring contract who could be traded. D'Lo played 82 games last year. The entire time, the LA sports media was saying that we were trying to trade him. Again, trying to trade someone is such a ridiculous way to phrase something. Like, were we listening to phone calls? Of course, if you can get Kyrie Irving for D'Lo, you should investigate that, right? But we were not calling the Nets and being begging them for Dorian Finney-Smith for D'Lo. That's how people interpret these types of statements. It's just ridiculous, So I think D'Lo, I don't know. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think, there is a path to winning with D'Lo. He has been in this situation multiple times. He's been traded 3 times already in his career. He's an NBA professional. He's playing for a contract. We're going to get as focused of a D'Lo, in my opinion, as we got last year. Mm-hmm. In some ways, maybe more focused, because last year he was trying to disprove the narratives from his sort of playoff, the way he went out in the playoffs the prior season. But he always had the player option as a fallback, True. Right? And this year he is a pure expiring contract playing for his next contract. So he's going to be locked in, and any player on this team except for LeBron and AD could be traded. So I don't know. I feel like that stuff's overstated.
I mean, I do understand the notion, obviously, of weaning yourself off of a guy who has a good likelihood of being traded eventually. That was essentially our argument with Russell Westbrook, right? Although I guess you could say, well, he's a negative. So if you get rid of him anyways, anything coming back will be a positive. So it's tougher with D'Lo because he's actually somewhat of a positive. So if you rely on him too much, you might have to change the whole nature of your team once he's gone.
Yeah, or you just, if you're relying on him that much, you just keep him. It's there have been guys on expiring contracts before. I don't understand this. It's not the case. We made the Russell Westbrook trade to get, a handful of players, and we used a first round pick. We extended Jared Vanderbilt, and we extended D'Angelo Russell. 3 years of D'Angelo Russell at the, or 2.5 years, whatever you want to say, at the kind of output he's been giving us and the role he's been giving us, that was worth the investment. You don't just get to no other team thinks that they're entitled to just keep cycling every time someone's on an expiring contract. We better swap it up for another asset. It's you just keep him if he's that he's that integrated and helping you that much, because he's our third best player, one of the best player. Honestly, he is one of the top, I don't know how you want to rank him, 20. He's clearly a starting caliber NBA point guard. So, this isn't rocket science.
Right. And I think ultimately I agree with you. I think it's a very galaxy brain thing to do this. And if anything, you are starting off the season even awkwarder, because it's that guy should clearly be the starting point guard. Why is he coming off the bench? This is exactly what Darvin Ham did in December that derailed our season. I get the part about not being so reliant on D'Lo and trying to establish a reconfigured identity for the starting unit and the team in general. But the Lakers just need to actually win games and tread water to start the season so that they can position themselves well for a trade come the deadline. So why then would we actively dismantle our starting unit with D'Lo that has continuity and that went 18-8 to close 2023 and then 22-10 to close 2024? You are
Yeah.
you are actively fighting back against the one thing that this team has going in their favor, Tommy, and that's the continuity of the
Yeah.
core guys. So why? And this
Yeah. Well, no, these people would want to lose games. They would rather lose
to be
games in
right
the short
about
term
their
because
favorite players.
just to be right about that. It's like crazy. It's like let's not play our third best player because we might trade him in 6 months. Like this is like complete nonsense.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing I want to point out is, secondly, I just think that if and when D'Lo's traded, the Lakers need to get back a player who can approximate a lot of the things that he does well. So in my opinion, they should force themselves into playing the way D'Lo likes to play, Tommy, because he is the way we like to play. So he should be the stand-in for this type of player anyways. And so it's almost like forcing ourselves to make sure that whoever we trade D'Lo for is kind of like a D'Lo, but plays better in the playoffs. You know what I mean? So is there going to be an adjustment period? Sure, because it's a new player. But in terms of the style of play, if he's a spacing point guard who can also play make like D'Lo, then there shouldn't be that much of an adjustment period. So I feel like, to your point about NBA players being professionals who know how to handle this stuff, NBA teams in general are also professionals, Tommy. They have dealt with flipped rosters at the deadline before. LeBron James especially has dealt with flipped rosters. You don't think he's going to know how to handle, like, oh, shoot, we have 3 new guys that we have to integrate. We just did this in 2023 and went to the Western Conference Finals. Oh, yeah, I did it with Cleveland when we got Jordan Clarkson, Rodney Hood, and Larry Nance, and I took that team to the finals. Like, I think we have to give these players and the NBA teams credit for, this is normal standard business. Even if I think people are putting too much weight on the mid-season adjustment period. I understand that we have a
It's
new rookie
yeah.
head coach in JJ Redick, but I think we're giving that more weight than it should have.
Well, and we're also assuming there will be a necessitated adjustment period. What if we can't trade D'Lo at the deadline? Let's trade him. This argument is like essentially, and sorry if I'm dumbing this down too much for the people who like buy this argument, but like to me, this argument feels like, well, we might trade him in February, so let's just trade him for anything now. What if we don't find another trade like we haven't been able to for the last 2 years? Like I just don't. We're just assuming that we're going to be able to find something for him that's going to be helpful. If we end up, it's February and we're getting the same, like, okay, we'll give you Dorian Finney-Smith if you give us D'Lo in a first type of offers for D'Lo. Like, we're probably still not going to trade him because we're not just going to take Dorian Finney-Smith for no reason.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know. It's completely...
All right.
I'm so tired of talking about it. I just I hope we just extend D'Lo. I know we can't actually under the CBA, but it would be funny if we could. And tomorrow it just drops that we've extended D'Lo for 3 years.
There's value in waiting, and again, value in holding on to the continuity of the core that you've built and not galaxy braining yourself into, well, this guy, we might move this guy, so let's wean ourselves off this guy. Here's a weird scenario where, let's say we do bench D'Angelo Russell. And what if the team starts off, Tommy, 3-7, and then midway through, JJ Redick's like, you know what? This D'Angelo Russell thing off the bench isn't working. Let's start him again. And then all of a sudden, we're in this cycle of ping-ponging D'Angelo Russell on and off the bench, and we've just screwed up our entire sort of any continuity that we were hoping to build. In essence, it would turn out to be like a snapshot of what we did last season that totally took us off track after we won the IST, right? Where it's like, what if D'Angelo Russell off the bench doesn't work, and then you go back to him starting, and then that doesn't work as well? When if you had just started off with the matter-of-fact thing, maybe we would be a good team.
So the more and more we talk about this, right, is like you sort of start to understand why everybody hates Lakers fans for like coming up with this ridiculous stuff as though like they've come up with this idea that they like galaxy brain this thing that nobody else could think of. It's like, to put it, like make another comparison using non-Lakers players, right? Brandon Ingram is going into a season on an expiring contract and wants an extension that the New Orleans Pelicans are not willing to pay.
Let's wean him off the bench. Let's wean off him and put him on the bench.
And like, look, they're not going to come to an extension agreement before the season starts. They're not going to come to a trade with another team before the season starts. He is going to be on this team. when the season starts. Okay, and we know how, his role and his mindset and how he views himself and the type of player that he views himself as, right, compared to D'Angelo. It is like, could you imagine how, like, it would be laughable to suggest that, well, it's not going to work out with BI long term. They need to resign Trey Murphy. They can't keep Trey Murphy and BI. They're going to keep Trey Murphy. It, like, one way or another, BI is going to get traded this year by the deadline. Some team is going to eventually, take him off their hands. So just bring him off the bench. The Pelicans fans would like laugh their asses off. The Pelicans front office, everybody, NBA fans across the globe will laugh their asses off at the notion that you would be putting your third best player, off the bench, losing potentially untold numbers of games just because you might trade this guy in February.
Yeah. And look, I think it's a little bit different with D'Angelo Russell and Brandon Ingram for obvious reasons. Brandon Ingram's like a 6'9" wing. D'Angelo Russell is on the court next to Austin Reeves. So we know the ceiling of that backcourt duo, especially in the playoffs. But even having said that, I'm not necessarily opposed to D'Angelo Russell coming off the bench. I'm just saying, why the hell would you start the season off that way without any evidence that makes any sense? You know what I mean? So like, yeah, if the Lakers start off 2-8, Tommy, are you interested in maybe seeing what D'Angelo Russell can do off the bench?
If we start off 2-8, it's because something is wrong with our roster balance or like rotations or lineups. So yeah, of course, at that point you see what works, but no reason to go into this. No other team in the league,
let's shoot ourselves in the foot,
would handicap themselves the way that our fan base loves to handicap ourselves. Let's take objectively our third best player, who has been a former All-Star, who's like had countless accolades, who literally has the franchise record for 3-pointers made in a season, and bring him off the bench for no reason other than it gives me psychological comfort that if they trade him in February, at least I've gotten used to the starting lineup now. And so you know what it gives you comfort? At the end of the year, when they talk about which lineups have played the most minutes, our starting five will be up there, baby. Because we didn't waste all that time. Let's hang a banner. Most minutes played by a starting five in a single season. The Los Angeles Lakers 24-25 roster.
Yeah, never mind that D'Angelo Russell was the number one non-LeBron player who passed the ball to Anthony Davis the most last season. It's like, what are we doing here?